last story is about another campaign group that's had a hatchet job done on them, and this is the Mail on Sunday. Don't Pay UK, the middle class. This is sort of, they've been keeping themselves under the radar by not naming who's at the front of the organisation or who's running it. And the Mail on Sunday have done an expose on it. I mean, it just kind of shows how you can't really get away from the media and keep a low profile. What do you make of this attempt to expose them, Pamela? Do you think it was a mistake for Don't Pay to not have sort of come out at the start and said who they are?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I've said that publicly because, well, firstly, people are entitled to know who's got their data, basically. But also, because of my job, I see people all the time who are desperate. And I do have to say, this cost of living crisis, everybody keeps saying is suddenly upon us. It's not. I've been dealing with people in poverty for the last decade because of the cuts to benefit, because of the insecure work, all the rest of it, and because the soaring rents. It's just that it's actually affecting more middle class people now. Now, yes, absolutely, fuel is a huge worry to everybody, but it's just one factor. If you're trying to rent a flat in London, and I'm sure most other cities, you're talking about paying £1,400 a month. Now, people on low incomes can't afford that, but they've got no choice because they can't get council housing. Your people living on small amounts of money have been going out without food for the last decade that I've seen. But anyway, if we get back to Don't Pay, my worry about it, first of all, they should have said who they are, because otherwise it could be anybody, couldn't it? They've been exposed now, if you like. I don't agree with what they're being attacked. You know, it almost makes me feel sorry for them. But I don't actually agree with the campaign either, because what's going to happen is it shouldn't be Don't Pay, because it's just going to be pay in a different way. Because what the energy companies will do is first they'll try to put you on a repayment plan, then they'll try to put a meter, and they can force their way in after some, you know, going to court, they can force their way into your home and install a meter. If you've got a smart meter, they can probably do it already anyway. They'll add the debt and the bailiff's costs and everything else to your debt, and you'll be even worse off. And what worries me is that people will have seen this on the news and they are desperate. People are desperate for ways that they can just find a way to survive. So they may think, well, that's a great idea, I'll do that. There's so many people doing it. It's all right if you're middle class, if it's not going to affect your credit rating, because you don't have to go and try and rent and compete with other people to rent some hovel and pay a fortune for. But that's what landlords can pick and choose who rents their dreadful properties. So my worry is that people are going to be far worse off, and there's no accountability. So if you're following the other campaign, you know that it's Zara Sultana, you know that it's Ian Byrne, you know that it's trade unions, you know who to blame if you're worse off. That's the way it should be. Whereas people still don't really know. We've got the Daily Mail saying who it is, but who knows? They called Michael Chesham Matthew Chesham, so they haven't even got that right. So it does worry me. But more importantly than this is people are desperate for some action, and they are invested in this. So many people are invested thinking this is a great idea, and it will fail. And then people are going to be even more disillusioned, and it makes real organising all the harder. And you do wonder what the motive is behind this. And I do think to some extent that it is a data capturing exercise for small organisations who are trying to build their base. So it's misguided, I think. I really, you know, maybe it's done with good intention, I don't know, but they haven't thought it through. They haven't they say they've got debt experts and lawyers working with them. I can't believe it. You know, I really can't believe it, because I asked in my office, what do people think? And we've got real lefties in my office. We've got a mix of people. Every single one of them said, yes, have a revolution, but, you know, not at the expense of the poor and vulnerable and make them worse off. And that's what's being done. And they say, well, we've got all the advice on our website of what to do. You've got to be very organised to make sure that you don't get affected. And the people I see, their lives are so difficult. They're not going to be able to do that. People I see don't turn up for appointments on the right day, don't turn up at the right time, don't turn up with the documents. And if you've ever tried, if you're going to be disconnected, if you've got horrible big bailiffs on your doorstep, if you're trying to ring the gas companies or the electric companies to get through to them to say, please don't do this, good luck with that, because you cannot get through. Make a complaint to the ombudsman, they lose the complaint. You know, it's really, really difficult. So I'm really concerned about this. I absolutely understand people are desperate for some action, and all these organisations that have constant Zoom meetings say fight back this, fight back that, they probably wouldn't have any of us three on their panel because we're too dangerous. That's the irony. They're following the narrative of the Labour Party in silencing people who they think shouldn't speak. So they're doing exactly the same. So I have more kind of hope for Enough is Enough. It's got a terrible name though, but I have more kind of hope that that will work. But the other thing I would say, that there's too much of this top down being done, and it's only going to change by people themselves. And that's what's happened in the past when things have become like this. And it's hard to see that it's sustainable for any of these parties because they're not offering anything. And there's going to be a vacuum because Labour, they may well get elected at the next election because the Tories are doing so bad. They might. And if they do, they will fail because they're not offering anything to deal with people's living situation. So the rents, the poverty, climate crisis, you know, everything is just, they're offering nothing. So people then will be completely disillusioned. And then you are heading either for revolution or for fascism. We know that because that's what history tells us. And my worry is that it will be fascism. And revolution often isn't that great. It leads to things in the end. So we desperately need a kind of mass, I don't know, uprising movements. We have to do that. The trade union.
Can I just come in? I mean,
yeah,
I think there's a lot of protest in this don't pay. It's sort of like we need to show protest, but it doesn't really have a demand other than we're not paying our bills. And that's where there's something not quite there. They need to have an actual, we want this thing that will come from this. I just don't get that from their campaign. Can I just quickly, do you think that Don't Pay should respond to that hatchet job by coming out and being less anonymous and actually saying who they are and what they're about? Or do you think they should just continue to not say anything?
Yeah, I think they should come out and say who they are for all sorts of reasons. But I do have to address some of the comments that are coming up in the chat and have been said to me on Twitter, is that the problem is people can't pay. I know that. I see it every day. But the issue is they're not going to not pay by following this campaign. They're going to ask to pay more. So, but instead of having a debt of 2,000, the debt will then be 4,000 because it will have added charges. It will be a higher rate that they're paying through a meter, and they'll have charges of bailiffs, etc. So it's not a question. I absolutely understand people can't pay. I see that every day. What they should be doing is not taking advice from anonymous people. They should be getting advice from, you know, unemployed worker centres, from citizens' advice, from law centres. That's what they should do. And what I would just say for people worried about paying, there are some rules that they can't cut certain people off during October to March. So if you're a pensioner, that's getting older and older. Obviously, it's not many people are pensioners these days, but because the government keeps lifting the age limit. But also, if you have somebody with a disability in your home, they can't disconnect. But what I would say is get advice if you're worried about not being, well, everybody's worried about not being able to pay, and do get involved and take action. But I'm not sure that Don't Pay is the answer at all.